The automatic glass doors of Grayson's Market slid open with a soft hiss, their familiar hum barely audible under the fluorescent buzz of store number 7. A man stepped inside, his faded denim jacket blending seamlessly with the early morning crowd, a worn baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. His hands were buried deep in his pockets, his posture unassuming, just another customer navigating the aisles. But no one in the store could have guessed his true identity. Daniel Grayson, the CEO whose name adorned the bold, red and white logo hanging above the entrance. He wasn't here to shop or to inspect the store as a figurehead. He was here to uncover the truth behind the whispers of despair that had reached his desk, whispers that threatened the very soul of the empire he'd built. Daniel moved slowly, his eyes scanning the sales floor with the precision of a man who had spent decades learning every detail of his business. The store was a shadow of the vision he'd once held. Shelves were disorganized, cans tilted haphazardly, and bread packages sat torn and neglected. A promotional sign for a summer sale leaned precariously against a trash bin, its corners curling from neglect. The air was heavy, not with the lively chatter of a thriving retail space, but with a stifling silence that seemed to press down on everyone inside. Customers moved like ghosts, their footsteps soft, their faces blank, no greetings exchanged, no laughter shared. It was as if the store itself had forgotten how to breathe. Behind checkout lane 4, a woman in her 30s scanned items with mechanical precision. Her name tag read Kendra. Her hair was loosely tied in a messy bun, strands escaping to frame a face marked by exhaustion. Her eyes, red and swollen, betrayed a struggle she was trying to hide. She forced a smile for each customer, but her hands trembled as she passed bags across the counter. Daniel, standing behind a shelf of canned goods, pretending to inspect a tin of beans, watched her closely. He hadn't imagined it. She had just wiped a tear from her cheek, with the sleeve of her uniform, right in the middle of her shift. His chest tightened. This wasn't just a bad day. Something was deeply wrong. Grayson's Market had been Daniel's pride, built on a simple but unshakable philosophy. Treat employees fairly, and they'll treat customers well. That belief had carried him from a single store to a chain of 18, employing hundreds of staff who once wore the Grayson's logo with pride. In the early days, he'd worked the floors himself, stacking produce, scrubbing grease stains, and greeting customers with a warmth that made them return. His stores were known for their energy, clean aisles, bright lighting, and employees who smiled not because they were told to, but because they believed in the place they worked. But in recent months, something had shifted. Customer complaints had surged, shelves sat empty, and employee morale had plummeted. Then came the anonymous letter, slipped into a plain brown envelope, its words haunting. Someone in your store is being pushed to the edge. Look into it before it's too late. The regional managers had dismissed it as a disgruntled employee's rant, blaming lazy staff or Gen Z whining. But Daniel knew better. When complaints multiplied, when silence replaced laughter, it wasn't just a few bad apples. It was a rot spreading from within. Now, standing in the dairy section, surrounded by spilled onions and the faint, stale smell of old coffee, he saw it clearly. This wasn't laziness. This was a team that had given up. Kendra! The shout sliced through the store like a whip. Daniel spun around, his eyes locking on a tall, broad-shouldered man striding out of the stockroom. His black vest was embroidered with Troy, supervisor, and his face was flushed with anger. He slammed a clipboard onto the checkout counter, the sound echoing in the quiet store. Crying on shift again? He growled, his voice low but venomous. How many times do I have to tell you? If you can't keep it together, quit. Kendra froze, her hands pausing mid-scan. She swallowed hard, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. I'm sorry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll be fine. Fine? Troy leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. You've taken 2 days off this month. Don't be surprised if your shifts next week disappear entirely. His tone was sharp, laced with menace, not discipline. Kendra gave a faint nod, her red-rimmed eyes cast downward. No one stepped in. No one spoke. The other employees kept their heads down, their movements mechanical, as if they'd learned to make themselves invisible. Daniel stood behind the shelf, his fists clenched in his coat pockets. This wasn't management, it was intimidation, plain and cruel. He'd never allowed such behavior in his company, yet here it was, thriving under his own banner. He watched Kendra resume scanning, her voice trembling as she said, "Thank you," to each customer. her hands shaking as she handed over receipts. She didn't scream, didn't push back, just braced herself to keep from falling apart. Daniel's gaze stayed fixed on her, his mind racing. What burden was she carrying that brought her to tears mid-shift? Yet still she pushed forward. As he moved through the aisles, pretending to browse snacks and candy, Daniel noticed everything. The glances employees exchanged, the slouched shoulders, the unnatural silences that had no place in a bustling retail store. A young male employee, Marcus, stubbed his toe on an unattended pallet. No one asked if he was okay. He just limped on, restocking shelves with his head down. An elderly customer stood at the service counter for nearly 3 minutes, her cart idle, waiting for help that never came. In the frozen goods section, a female employee stretched to hang a price tag, her shoulders trembling, her breathing heavy, as if the act of standing took every ounce of her strength. Daniel saw it clearly now. This was a team operating without hope, moving through motions because they had no choice. The produce section was no better. An onion lay on the floor, its skin dried and cracked. Daniel bent to pick it up, but there was no one to hand it to. In the old Grayson's market, mornings began with staff lining up to greet customers, managers checking aisles for scent, lighting, and order. Here the floors were dingy, the air stale, and the employees' eyes carried a weariness that cut deeper than fatigue. Daniel's fist tightened again. This wasn't just a poorly run store. During break time, Daniel lingered near the break room, a granola bar from the vending machine in hand. He didn't plan to go inside. He just wanted to see how the staff unwound after such a tense shift. But as he approached, he stopped cold. From within came the sound of quiet sobbing, then a voice, hushed and broken. "I can't do this anymore," it said. I really tried, but nothing's ever enough." It was Kendra. "They cut my hours this week. I can't even afford gas. My rent's late." Silence followed, then another voice. Softer, probably Marcus. "Troy's coming after me too. Anyone with kids, or who gets sick, or asks for time off, he punishes them." Kendra's voice broke again. "I didn't skip my shift because I was lazy. My son had an asthma attack. He was hospitalized. I begged Troy, but he said I wasn't trustworthy." Daniel stood frozen, her words cutting through him like a blade. Each syllable struck at his greatest fear, that the company he'd built, the one he'd poured his life into, had become a place that crushed people's spirits. He'd read cost reports, signed off on wage summaries, but never seen the human. Cost until now, an employee sobbing, because she couldn't afford the gas to get home. That night, Daniel followed Kendra at a distance as she left the store. He didn't want to startle her. He just needed to understand the weight she carried. She walked slowly, clutching a worn-out bag, her shoulders trembling as if holding back another wave of tears. In the dim parking lot, she stopped by an old sedan, its paint chipped, rear window patched with tape. She opened her wallet, flipping through its compartments. A utility bill, a small ID photo, a nail clipper. Then she turned it upside down and shook it. A few coins tumbled out, scattering on the pavement. She stared at the small pile in her hand, her fingers trembling, then covered her face and collapsed into sobs. Daniel stood behind a tree, the night wind slipping through his thin coat. He didn't feel the cold, only a heaviness in his chest. He'd built Grayson's market to be a place of opportunity, not desperation. Kendra's tears weren't just personal. They were a symptom of a system failing under his watch. He made a decision then, tomorrow. He'd return, not as a CEO, but as a worker, to dig deeper and protect those drowning in silence. The new hire. The next morning, Daniel arrived before dawn, dressed in a fresh Grayson's uniform, a temporary name tag reading Dan, probationary staff pinned to his chest. No one paid him any attention as he was assigned to restock. Shelves in the dry food section, next to a skinny young man with glasses and slightly messy brown hair. "Welcome, newbie," the young man said without looking up, his voice flat. "I'm Marcus. Don't ask why people don't talk much. It's just less trouble that way." Daniel gave a faint smile. This kid was sharp, already guarded. As they rearranged boxes of cereal, Daniel asked quietly, "How long have you worked here?" 2 years, Marcus replied, glancing around before lowering his voice. "But I've never felt the air this heavy, not like these past few weeks. Troy's been tightening shifts, swapping schedules harshly. Anyone with kids or personal stuff gets